Okay, so enjoy the match while it's playing, and I will talk about exactly what match we're watching in a little bit. But to start off, I just wanted to talk about and I guess explain and introduce what the channel is actually going to be about. And the idea is this is all WWE 13 footage, a great wrestling game, and I'm going to be doing a WWE 13 Universe mode. Now, if you don't know what Universe mode is, it's kind of like, I guess, a wrestling version's game of a season mode, where, you know, you're playing through the year, playing through the different events, and as you do that, you know, sort of random events and storylines kind of start to unfold. And it is a really cool feature. It's been in the last few WWE games, and they keep improving on it every year. It's not perfect, it's very far from, but I think it is a great feature and adds a lot of replayability to the game. So I'm going to be using that. I'm recording footage, obviously, and the idea is that this universe mode is based on an e-wrestling federation called Global Impact Wrestling. Now, if you don't know what an e-wrestling federation is, short term is eFed, and it's essentially just an online wrestling federation. So you join up to the site, you make your own character, and you know, you write promos and role plays as if you were that character. And what we did in Global Impact Wrestling, or GIW for short, was, you know, there was a weekly television show called Sentinel, and every 4 weeks there was a pay-per-view, and so you had to write one promo or one role play a week about your character, and then the owner or owners would, you know, read the scenes and decide who had done a better job and who would win the match come the show or the pay-per-view. And with pay-per-views, we actually had a vote where every member of the Fed could vote on who they thought had done the best over the month, and that person would win the match. So it is really just, you know, a wrestling federation where everything's happening through text rather than actions. And yes, it is extremely nerdy, but, you know, I certainly had a lot of fun back in the day. So to give you a bit of information about GIW specifically, it started in 2007. I started the Fed with a couple of other guys, and towards the end of 2007, I should say. Now, what happened was, and it happens with a lot of eFeds, is that basically we didn't have enough members. You know, we had about 3 or 4 guys. We couldn't get any new members, we couldn't get the message out there, and we were sort of dead in the water before we had even started. So we had, I think, 4 weeks for that first run and then called it quits. Now, in 2008, very early on, I think February or March 2008, I talked to a guy, Andy Savannah, who had been there in 2007, but I sort of said to him, I think we should give it another go. And he was open for that, and we did it again, and this time we had a whole lot of success. And basically I was writing, you know, the matches and organising all of that side, all the owner type duties that you do, while he was just concentrating on recruiting and spreading the message and getting more people to join. And he did that really well, and it was awesome of him. And so yeah, so we got the members, and we started an actual legitimate federation, and it is still going to this day, in one form or another. So, you know, we definitely had a lot of success there. Now, to just give you a very sort of Cliff Notes history of the Fed, like I said, started in 2007, came back in 2008, and experienced a lot of growth in 2008. And we had one guy join whose character was called Travis Roberts. And so that's how I'll refer to him. I'll refer to everyone by their character's name, for the most part anyway. Now, Travis was awesome. I mean, I was I was really struggling with the workload of just, making sure all the matches got written, all the role plays got read, people had storylines, people knew what was going on, all that stuff. And when he came along, he stepped up so much and helped me out with a lot of that work. And it wasn't long before he actually became co-owner of the Fed, so we were running it together. And during that time, I still sort of had final say over everything that happened, but he was there, we worked together, we shared ideas, we shared the workload, and it was really cool. Now, come the end of 2008, the Fed was doing really well, but I had just gotten a job, and I knew between that and university that I just wasn't going to have enough time to really do the job and do it justice. So at the end of 2008 we had, I think it was about 6 weeks break, maybe not quite that long, just to give everyone a chance to go off, have a rest, recharge their batteries so they didn't get burnt out, come back next year to a fresh start. And as we came back to that new year, I gave full control to Travis and said, I can't do it anymore, it's up to you. So he ran with it, and the original idea was that I was going to stay in the Fed but just be a regular roster member, so I'd still have matches, I'd still write role plays, but I just wouldn't be doing any of those only type duties. Didn't last long. I just called it quits completely after a few weeks for reasons that were, mostly my fault. It was just difficult for me to all of a sudden have to do things someone else's way. Like I wasn't in charge anymore, and I really struggled giving that up. So I just said, I'm out, and Travis was left to do everything on his own, and he did that, and he did an awesome job of it, and he kept the Fed alive to this very day, which I know I certainly couldn't have done. And so how he did that, as time progressed, and I think it was around sort of mid-2010, I'll say, I might not have the dates exactly right. Now, the GRW was struggling, basically. They weren't getting new members, a lot of the old members had left, and, it seemed like it might be going extinct. Now, there was another guy part of the Federation called Donovan Hastings, and again I'll refer to him by his character's name. Now, he had joined GRW in 2008, but that whole time he was actually the owner of a second federation called the Lock Wrestling Federation, or LWF. Now, I have no idea how he managed to own one fed and participate in another. I could never do that, but he did somehow. But around the same time, he sort of was having the same problem that, his federation, the LWF, was, seemed to be on its last legs, seemed like it might die off. So they joined the Feds. That took both of them, made one new one, and they called it the Unified Global Wrestling Coalition, or UGWC. And I've never liked that name, but that's neither here nor there. And the UGWC is still around today with Roberts and Hastings at the helm, so they've done a ridiculously good job of keeping that place going. So GIW certainly started 7 years ago now, in 2007, and it is still alive, in one sense today, and I think the LWF was around before even GIW was. So those guys have done a great job with that, and I will have a link to the site in the description if you're interested. But for the purposes of this universe mode, is that, it is GIW, it's Global Impact Wrestling, with a lot of the characters from that federation, and I guess we're kind of looking at a, what if scenario. What if the two federations had never joined? What if GIW had stayed on its own? And yeah, so I guess the important thing is this isn't a UGWC federation. It is GIW, and the reason for that is purely because GIW is what I was familiar with, and I do have a bit of a connection to it, having been the creator of the place. Now, to get to the match that we're watching here, basically the two guys in the ring, so Brandon Brown is the guy in brown tights, Declan Prescott is the guy in the blue. Now, Declan was my character, and I'll talk about him in a minute, but we'll start with Brandon, mostly for the reason that he's whooping Declan's ass right now. Brandon, yeah, he was one of the first guys in 2008 in that second run that we did. He was there from the start, and he was awesome. In terms of his, writing of his role plays, he was very much a comedic character, and he just, reading his stuff, I don't think I've ever laughed as much as I have reading the role plays and the crazy crap that he would come up with. Now, the character of Brandon, if I had to describe it, I guess I'd say is Shawn Michaels with anger management issues. Because, he'd just randomly super kick anyone that he could, and just, really weird, wacky stuff. And he actually had a feud going with Nicolas Cage, where, Nick Cage would show up in his scenes, and they'd go hunting for treasure together, and it was just, I'm not really doing it justice, but he was a funny guy. And Brandon's character had a cousin called Big B, and basically he was a extremely fat black guy, and they were cousins, yeah. And you will see Big B show up in a later match, but yeah, so they were cousins, they were a tag team, and they were just very cool. I loved both characters, and I certainly miss both characters, and that's why they were two of the first that I created when I decided to do this universe mode. So that's Brandon. Now, Declan, again, you can see there, he's getting destroyed and blood pouring down his face. A bit embarrassing. But yeah, he was my character, and his story is he was the owner of GIW. And I sort of likened him to Triple H during, that McMahon-Helmsley era, where he was the owner, but he was an active wrestler as well, and a very capable wrestler, and he would just blatantly, abuse his power just to do what was best for him and any of his buddies. And when I left, the story was kind of that he gave control of GIW to Travis Roberts, and Declan did eventually show up again in 2010. I made a return for a few months to e-fetting, and when he came back, he was a face. He had been humbled from losing his company. He had a family now, and he was just a changed man, I guess. So when the universe starts, both these guys will be faces, but during this time in 2008, which is when this match we're watching is from, Declan was very much the uber heel against Brandon's, uber face. And the story behind this match was that as the Fed started its second run in 2008, we wanted to crown a world heavyweight champion, or we called it a global heavyweight champion. And to do that, we had a tournament, and it was kind of like a King of the Ring style tournament. Well, actually, it was pretty much exactly like a King of the Ring tournament, where, the winner would be the first champion. And so we had, a series of matches over on Sentinel over a few weeks, until the final match was held at the first pay-per-view, which was called Infinity. And that final match was Brandon and Declan. And Declan won that match, and became the first champion. The next month, at the next pay-per-view, which was called Black Axis, Brandon, Declan, and a third man who shall remain nameless for the time being had a triple threat for that same title, where Brandon pinned that third man to become the second ever champion. And Declan sort of said, well, you never beat me, you pinned him, you didn't pin me, So the two of us should have one more match to determine who the winner is, and who really is the best. And so that happened at No Holds Barred in a last man standing match to end the feud. Now I won't tell you who won that match, because you'll find out from watching this recreation. But yeah, it was a feud that went on for a few months, and certainly it was the first really big feud that Brandon and that anyone in the Fed had been a part of. And the feud would continue after this match, but certainly this match was one of the biggest, if not the biggest, in the feud. So I hope that, so the last thing I guess is that I will be doing more matches, a combination of fantasy matches and recreations of historical matches, just to introduce everyone to the characters who will be showing up once the universe mode starts. And the thing is, I don't want it to be something where if you haven't been a part of GIW and you don't know the characters, then you can't enjoy my videos. So I am doing this just as a way to introduce all the different characters and let you see who they are so that you can be familiar with them. So more matches will be on the way, and I'll let you enjoy this one, which I think is just about over. So thank you very much for watching, and enjoy your day.
Did you look at this? The show wins! Here is your winner, representing the family, Brandon. We may need some help out here. This doesn't look good. I don't think I've ever seen